All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here this afternoon. My name's Brian Weissman. I cover our higher education customers with Snapstream. I'm joined by my colleagues Sarah Howard and Joel here. They are going to be assisting with some poll questions, with answering any of your questions related to things we're going to discuss this afternoon. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I did meet some of you at AEJMC last summer, and it was great to kind of learn a little bit more about what people are focused on in the field and how our product can align with the wants and needs of the folks at the colleges and the universities across the country. So Snapstream, today we're going to talk about content analysis and fact checking for not really only journalism schools, but really anything at the higher ed level. It can apply, as you'll see, across a number of different end users and really any areas of study. So a little bit more about who we are. We are a small but nimble and advancing company of about 30 folks, mostly based in Houston, with a few employees remotely located in other destinations. We currently work with a handful of customers that you see down there, as well as many others. Emerson, University of Cincinnati, Syracuse, so in some cases, these entities are using Snapstream at more of an individual level, where it's being embraced by particular professors and their research needs. And in some cases, it's being used at more of a departmental or multi-department level. So why TV content analysis? Really because everyone has a need for doing analysis when it comes to research, when it comes to understanding what kind of content is airing, and dissecting, what it means for a variety of use cases. In a lot of cases, we see that that's still being done internally in a very manual capacity. And with Snapstream, as we get more into the presentation and the interface itself, you'll see that we can bring a little bit more automation and technology to the ability to dissect this content. So looking after various specific topics across different networks, TV affiliates. One thing that I do want to go ahead and mention, because it comes up when I have conversations with folks at these schools, is as of right now, Snapstream is entirely correlated with broadcast TV. So what we do is TV very well and allow you to hone in on exactly what it is that you're trying to dissect. We do not pull in any streaming services or internet-based content, so it's going to be strictly broadcast TV. Things like media portrayal, how things are being showcased, different angles and different slants. As you can see, side-by-side coverage of the same type of storylines across different networks. So this, in a lot of cases, is what Snapstream is used for. Sarah, do you want to mention a little bit about a couple of the projects that Snapstream how it's been incorporated in the field?
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's quite a few universities that use Snapstream in a variety of different ways. So we have people that use it primarily in like a media lab setting. We have the Center for Political Communication, which mainly focuses on how the media is portraying different political events, which especially has been useful in this current election cycle. Texas Tech uses us. They have a specific content analysis lab that they use us in. And then we're also used, it's an umbrella of the Pew Research Center, the Project for Excellence in Journalism, and they also use Snapstream for a lot of analysis, whether it's television news, election coverage, and all of that stuff. And we'll go over a couple of case studies in detail a little bit later on in the presentation. Emerson has a really interesting use case, and then the University of Cincinnati does some pretty cool stuff too. So we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But we do kind of have a quick question for you guys. We do want to know if you're currently doing TV content analysis. We just kind of want to know, get an idea of how you're using that. So we're going to just launch this poll real quick. So if you don't mind just taking a couple of seconds to give us your answers here.
Great. So it looks like it was kind of across the board there a little bit. We have some folks that are using VCRs, some that would like to dive into the world of TV analysis, and a few folks that are using some other means. For those that are others, if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of what those things are, it's just would help us from a curiosity standpoint to understand a little bit more about the tools that are implemented currently. So one of the examples that we gave, or a couple of the examples we gave, it's not only from a faculty standpoint, but also as a student resource. So going back to what I was discussing earlier, this really can be used across a vast spectrum. There is, from a technical standpoint, there is hardware that the school is purchasing that is deployed into your local environment. And with that, there's no type of licensing set up with Snapstream. So when you have it, it's yours to use as you see fit. So it might be used in a variety of roles, both in the classroom for individual faculty members' research interests, and also as a student resource where people can go into a lab, they can pull up our interface, sift through content and find things for research projects, just for their own general interest, yeah, so it's really a multifold aspect, both on the student side and from a faculty standpoint. And then with that content that you're finding, you can actually access clips and share those out via Snapstream Cloud. So it's not even just contained necessarily to people that have access to Snapstream. If you found something, let's say you were collaborating on a project with somebody that's at another school, or somebody that doesn't have access to the system, you could share out certain content over the cloud, which we'll touch on in a second, and then they would be able to pull in the transcript information, the video content, and access it as well. So as I touched on, multi-departmental use, it really can be used across the board. Really the only restriction is that it is tied to your local area network. So anybody that has access to the network, just as you do, could be accessing Snapstream as well. So if you have people in the political science realm, as well as journalism, as well as even like a media relations or a PR standpoint for the school as a whole, everyone could be using Snapstream for their various needs. So how does it work? At a very high level, this illustration lays it out. That you have a TV source, and that could take on various forms, whether it's a campus cable feed that's coming out of the wall. It could be in an over the air. It could be cable or satellite set-top boxes. We can pretty much take in any type of feed that you have available. That would then go into, depending on what what fashion the source is, it would either go into an encoder for us to ingest and then put into a format that we can make compatible with the Snapstream server, which is what you see in step number 2. And then the server connects to your local network and is accessible to any number of end users at their workstations. We're actually compatible across pretty much whatever device you'd be working with, whether it's a tablet, PC, laptop, doesn't really matter. So what can you do inside of the interface? First and foremost, most higher ed use cases involve the recording of content, although you do have the ability to watch it live as well. So they're recording content in some capacity, whether it's specific shows or whether it might be all the programming that's airing on CNN or ABC or whatever the channel is. And so then you're building up an archive from scratch. And from there, you're using the closed captioning to search TV. So think of a hybrid of an enterprise DVR and Google search capabilities. And using Boolean search terminology, you can pick various filters to granularly hone in on that needle in the haystack mention of what it is that you're looking for. We do have another poll question now. Just want to understand a little bit more as far as what type of sources you would be looking to record. So we're going to throw up some options here and tell us what's applicable for you. Great, so it looks like pretty much a little bit of everything, which is about what I would have expected. So folks interested in sports, the local slant on the news front, the national scene, and the good news is you can do all the above. It really just depends on, it's up to you to customize your recording schedule, and then you have all of that to do a deep dive into the content. So within the archived database in the library, you can create a search and store customizable clips that you're extracting out of the recorded content. So you're able to search based off of particular channels, particular genres, various subcategories. And you can also monitor the transcripts. So we are extracting certain segments from the recorded content. It will not only give you, say, the 30-second video feed, but it will also have the associated closed captioning, which is what powers the search technology. And you can download the video and or the closed captioning text file for usage based on your needs. So in addition to manual searches, a lot of research projects, as an example, obviously involve a specific focus that isn't changing over time. So that directly aligns with our TV alerts feature, which allows you to automate that process. And if you want to know about everything related to women and their portrayal in the media, or anytime there are mentions of stuff related to politics and immigration, or whatever it is, the list goes on and on, then you can set up these keywords and it will send you an alert straight to your inbox, anywhere from weekly to daily or even real time, and at your fingertips. Basically an automated media monitoring layer that will let you know when your topical interests have been discussed within those recordings. You can create unlimited clips and store them digitally. Everything can be stored on the Snapstream server itself, you can also set up workflows to move the content to specific watch folders or to your workstation, and as I mentioned earlier, easily share those clips with colleagues and students as well. So let's take a look at a few case studies. Emerson College has been a long-time customer with us. They have a pretty prominent program in the Boston area, and so prior to Snapstream, they were using those things called VHS tapes. It seems like so long ago that I popped one of those into a VCR, but believe it or not, they are still around, and so they had piles and piles of those. Obviously, it's not very efficient from a space standpoint. There's limitations in terms of storage and recording needs, and it just wasn't very ideal in terms of what they needed to record and being able to do it fairly instantaneously. So now with Snapstream, they're able to sift through content on the fly. They can set recordings in a moment's notice as they need to. They can see side-by-side comparisons. They can quickly pull stuff up in the classroom as well as in their labs. And they can do, either recorded or real-time news analysis of what's taking place from their TV sources. Another interesting case is the University of Cincinnati. So I'm actually going to let Sarah discuss this briefly. She did a pretty in-depth interview with Nancy Jennings, who has been working with us incorporating Snapstream for a while for her research focus.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. So I spoke with Nancy. We actually do a pretty cool thing with our customers as well. We like to interview them and then we report on them. We like to do case studies. We've also done blog posts as well where we kind of detail what they're working on. So it's not just about Snapstream, but about the stuff that they're doing and the work that they've been focusing on. So Nancy Jennings is a professor at University of Cincinnati. She focuses on children's education and entertainment research. So they have a cheer lab. So what they were doing in this cheer lab is they were recording tons and tons of children's programming, not just the shows, but the commercials were important as well, because they wanted to get an idea of the types of commercials that were played during children's programming, as well as the content that was being provided. So you can see they had filing cabinets full of VCR tapes and just were taking up so much room. She was saying she had to have storage in her house. So it was really, really time consuming, and she wasn't really able to do as much of the research as she really wanted to do. So what they did is they adopted Snapstream, and what they were able to do with Snapstream was basically get rid of all of these filing cabinets, and they were also able to do a lot more of the media research that they were wanting to do. And she was able to focus on some other aspects that she hadn't initially thought of, like the transcripts. So the transcripts were really useful in finding the exact verbiage that was being used in these children's programming. So basically, it just allowed her to take everything that she was doing with all of those VHS tapes, make it digital, and then make it searchable. So she wants to know how many times, the word ice cream is mentioned in these television shows. She can do a search for that. So it was really interesting, and she's really passionate about it. It was really cool because she was also able to use it inside her cheer lab. I know Brian spoke earlier about using it in these media research labs, and she's able to give her students access to it as well. So when people are putting together a paper, if they're working on a thesis, they have the ability to use that Snapstream system that's just available there in the cheer lab. And that kind of sums it up for our use cases there. I think we're ready to see what this looks like. Brian, are you ready to give us a demonstration?
Yeah, absolutely. So I could talk more about it, but the verbal explanation isn't as good as the visual one, obviously. So let's go ahead and jump into the interface here. Give me just a moment to pull that up. So this is very similar to what your interface would look like, although you would be logging into obviously your own server and not the server that we have in-house. I just open up a browser, I go to the destination name of my Snapstream, and I've gone into the program guide here as a starting point. It's a very, very clean and intuitive interface. Program guide looks very much like what you would see at your own residence. It's a grid-like setup, and we would be pulling in all of the TV channels that you have available in your local environment. So if that's cable, satellite, local affiliates, premium channels, the whole 9 yards, that would populate in this interface right here. And let me see if I have. We seem to be recording a lot here, but let's just say this looks like some type of local Spanish channel, I think. I just want to click on this and show you what the options are. I can either watch this content live, or I can set up my recording tasks. Once you've set that in place one time, it's kind of a set it and forget it thing if you're doing it 24/7. If you're doing, isolated episodic recording tasks, obviously you might have to come in here from time to time to set those up as well. And then, as indicated by the red icon here, you can see everything that's being recorded. So once that's in place, all of the archived information is going to live over in the library. One thing that I did not mention earlier, and you might have already deciphered this on your own, but it is content that's coming from you. So you can scour information from today going forward if you had your Snapstream installed at this point, but we can't go into the past to find information that has already aired. So you're building up a digital archive from today going forward. And as you can see, I've got hundreds and thousands of hours of different content in here that I can sift through and find what I'm looking for. So let's say I wanted to pick a particular category, and this is it's a little bit of a racy example, if you will, but I just wanted to do it anyways. So I'm gonna choose the category, and I'm gonna say drama. And then I want to know whenever the word gay was mentioned, okay? So maybe I'm looking at stuff related to diversity and minorities and how stuff like that is portrayed, and it's going to take me to the exact moment in time when any of this information was discussed, and I can click into here, and then it's going to drop me straight into the point in time, hopefully here, there we go, when this was mentioned, right? So I've got this, and here it is. I've got my clip where it talks about stray, gay, bi, transgender, etc. I could then extract this either using my clipping tools right here. And so now I've created my 8-second clip. I'm going to call this my EDU test clip. I can come down here and I can say LBGT, prime time, E, whatever I want to, and then save that to a particular folder. So one thing that's important about the tagging is I do always recommend using tagging because that correlates just like the closed captioning does. I can do a search based off of that. And so, for example, if there was something, let's say, related to, I don't know, I was doing a search on climate change, and I wanted to pull up very easily all 15 different clips that I extracted, or if I did a search right for like Houston Marathon or Trump or whatever it is, any of those clips that I've associated with that labeling it'll pull that up instantaneously. So I could come back here and I could do a search of, higher education and tuition. Obviously, if I just did my search for like education, it gives me over 1,000 results. If I go ahead and, narrow that down a little bit, I do education and Trump, it takes me down to 64 results. When I do something like just education and I get those 1,200 mentions, that doesn't really do me a lot of good, because I might as well sit there and I'm not going to want to sift through all 12,000 or 1,200 of those different mentions. But as I use my Boolean search terminology, it's going to allow me to really hone in on exactly what it is that I'm looking for. Also, if I come over to the library, I can go ahead and let me come to some stuff that's already been recorded. These are probably not the best examples, only because they're not really related to each other, but obviously what you're recording is not going to be as broad as what we have on this demo system. So there's probably going to be a lot closer ties to the content of what I'm about to do. But I'm going to select this. I'm going to select this next one, select this next one, and a fourth one. And now I'm going to let this run. And you're going to see this quadrant like setup here in just a moment. Here we go. And let me mute that briefly. And you can see that I can synchronize and run 4 shows simultaneously next to each other.
I'm going to interrupt Brian here for just a second and just let you guys know the quality that you're seeing is not indicative of the actual Snapstream player. There is a lag with GoToWebinar. So when you're watching this natively in your browser with regular Snapstream, this will be like you're watching it on your live TV. So just keep that in mind.
Sorry, I should have pointed that out. I'm sitting here staring at my screen and it looks crystal clear to me. Looking at when Sarah's looking at the projector, also in the same room that we're in, it does not by any means look crystal clear. But yeah, that's just a sharing kind of hurdle that we have in place here. So, I've got these 4 different shows. I can sync them up to the exact, second that each of them are airing. And obviously having 2 sports related things, something food related and something from the History Channel, that might not be what you're doing your exact comparison on. But if you are doing your nightly news across Fox, ABC, NBC, and CBS, that's going to be that's going to generate some really good observations for you as far as how stories are being portrayed, especially if it's like breaking news. How that's a really great opportunity to dissect things both in the classroom as well as after the fact for research purposes. If we come over here to alerts, this is what we had talked about earlier as far as bringing a little bit of automation to searches that you're always going to want to do. So if I call this my Houston alert, and I can send in any number of people can do this. Hold on a second here. So I can pick my email address or whoever's, and then I can come in and say, severe weather and diversity and immigration and crime and minorities or whatever it is. Obviously, the more generic you are with stuff, it might not. Yes, you're going to get more results, but it's also maybe not going to be as as applicable with what it extracts for you. But the idea being that any number of end users can set up automated alerts customized to what they need to be able to gain from the system. And then that'll be delivered to their inbox at whatever frequency you choose. So if we go back to the library for a second, everything besides watching things live is going to be stored in the library section. So you can upload additional content and store it in here as sort of a digitalized repository and save it to particular file folders. Any clips that you make are going to be saved over here under My Clips. You can also create a playlist that would allow you to string together multiple different clips into one mega clip. This is the tagging that I mentioned earlier that you can come in here and do a search for to bring up anything that's been labeled under those particular tags. And that pretty well covers the library section. There is a component that may or may not be relevant for some of you on the call, which is from a social media standpoint. I do just want to mention it real briefly though. So let me go ahead and click into, let's say, this program right here. And you'll notice that in addition to the clipping tools, we have integration with Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And that would allow you to extract content and post to either personal pages or your individual page as well.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quick. We actually have an interesting question that was on there. Somebody asked if each user has their own private library, since you were just talking about libraries, if you want to address that.
Yes, so yes and no. You can store stuff that is just specific to your login, and you can also, which is, so all of the stuff in My Clips, well, maybe I should get some clarification on the question. So one way to answer the question, I guess, is that from a clipping standpoint, yes, it is going to be stored within your own, individual use. From a recording standpoint, that content typically is going to be accessible to anybody in the library. There are ways to put it. I mean, you could put it into individual folders that are just assigned to you. So it kind of the answer to that is kind of goes both ways. It can both be accessed by everybody as far as the recording side, but you can also, partition things off just for your own usage. And that actually kind of segues me into the admin section of this. Which comes in really handy when you have A, multiple users of the system, and B, the IT side of the house, which typically has to be involved with the setup of this, and they want to have a bit of control over who's accessing what. So if we look at the security settings, we have configuration with Active Directory, which is something you may or may not be familiar with, but it's a way to categorize users' login credentials and kind of control their permission settings within different platforms. So we can map what you already have in place with the having students and faculty and administrators use their same login credentials to access Snapstream. And then you can create subgroups. And from this, if there are particular things that need to be segmented or need to be protected from certain people seeing various content, that would be configured within the security settings section of the interface. So for example, if I go into my administrators group, you see that we have pretty much all the functions enabled because they need to be able to have access to everything. Versus if we look at just live TV viewers, you'll see that almost all of their capabilities are disabled. And if I were to log out and log back in as one of those other subgroups, I might not see all of these different sections here. I might only see the guide, or I might only see the library, because that is all that, you know, someone has given me access to. Another thing that, this is where you can control the Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages. As far as linking external accounts to be able to share things out. And it does not look like it's enabled on here, so give me just 1 second. I'm going to show one more thing. Well, so I wanted to show you the workflow section as well, and it's pretty intuitive. It's exactly what it sounds like. So you can set up various workflows as well that with a trigger condition, like when something has been recorded or when a clip is created. This might get more away from like the research and instructional side of things and maybe more to, you know, production related things, or if there's a reason that you need it in a certain file format. So let's say when a clip is created, it can be transcoded into certain formats. It can be exported automatically to a watch folder that's outside of the Snapstream ecosystem. It can be deleted after a certain amount of time. So there's also that functionality. I don't know if this has come up in the questions, but just one final thing that I was going to throw out there. It usually gets asked, like, how much can I record? So our device can be customized with scalable levels of storage. So that's basically the answer to that is, number one, it depends on how many channels, how frequently you're recording, and also what type of storage capacity is on the server. There's anywhere between 2 and 40 terabytes, depending on exactly what type of solution we provide you. So with that said, it operates automatically on a first in, first out basis. The oldest content will automatically get deleted first, but you can protect anything that's important to you so that it always keeps that on the system. Or you can always, you know, move it over somewhere outside of Snapstream. So with that, are there any additional questions that we maybe have that Joel and Sarah haven't gotten to yet? If anything does come up, please continue to send those our way.
And before we end, we just kind of want to ask one more poll question here, and we just want to get an idea of what your time frame is. Oh, sorry. How likely you are to use a product like Snapstream if this is something that is going to be useful to you and your team.
I am happy to take some conversations offline as well at a time that's that's helpful for you guys. Would love to, you know, talk about more details related to each of your particular use cases, and maybe even put a demo in your hands if that's something that you're interested in.
We do have another question on here. Somebody asked a little bit if you could touch a little bit more on how this integrates with social media, if you can kind of run through that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I glazed over that a little bit. So let me back into the system here, and hopefully we can get a little bit quicker response time. on the system. So let me find, let's just come into this show right here. Okay, so we've got this this Fox segment from a couple hours ago, and it's the daily White House briefing. And basically, just going to pause this real quickly. So you see the video on the left-hand side. You've got your closed captioning on the right-hand side, and then you have what I refer to as the scrubbing tools, both on the bottom of the feed as well as to the right-hand side. There are 3 different icons over here that correspond to the social media platforms that I mentioned earlier. So Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So what I can do is, and I don't know what Spicer is talking about, but let's just say that it's, you know, something that I want to make available on an external account. I go ahead and let this run, and instead of creating my start point and my end point and just clipping it out, I'm going to start, let this run for a second, end this, and then choose one of these platforms. So I'm going to choose my Twitter feed, and I now have this 4-second clip. It's native video, which is really important for engagement on these platforms, and I can do a couple of things. I can either take this native video and send it out to one of my linked accounts. So we'll send it to this made up account here, and you know, put in some caption that goes along with it. I can put in, you know, any additional commentary that I want to, and then I can tweet this, or I can queue it up to go out at a specified future time frame. So if I want this to go out at 5 o'clock today, I can do that. Or if I want to send it out right now, which I do, I'm just going to do that as well. And then that'll go out. I can also take a screenshot. So I can just go ahead and take a screenshot. I can download it or send it as an email attachment. And likewise, I can do the same thing for Facebook or for YouTube. And then lastly, all of that information is compiled over in this social dashboard tab. So you can see all of my posts to Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. And when I click on this, there's not going to be a lot of information because these accounts aren't getting used interactively, but you can see that I can easily cross post. If I got a lot of engagement or just wanted to send that to the other channel, I can cross post easily between these accounts. And I also get information as far as number of likes and retweets and comments. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit more about the social media integration.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian. So we had another question too. Somebody asked specifically about if this covers commercials as well. So I don't know if we touched on that or not, but if you want to kind of talk about that a little bit.
So it does cover commercials. It covers everything that airs. I would say that the short answer is that not 100% of commercials that air have closed captioning associated with them. The majority of them do. And depending on, and we also have a technology that basically can detect when something segues between the show and advertisements themselves. So that's something to keep in mind as well that could be beneficial.
All right. We just want to thank everybody so much for joining us today. I think that it's kind of wrapping up the demonstration here. We'll stay on the line for a couple of minutes. If anybody has any additional questions, we'll be hanging out here to answer those. But thanks again for joining us. I will be sending out the recording of the webinar so that you can reference it again, or if you want to share it with anyone else in your organization that wasn't able to make the webinar. And then we'll be following up with all of you to see how Snapstream can kind of fit into your workflows. So thanks again, guys.